Hello and welcome everybody to this edition of the GCNC World View. I am Chris Day, your host, co-founder of the Global Cannabis Network Collective, CEO of Gateway Proven Strategies, and your partner in this journey around the world of the global cannabis ecosystem. I was doing some reflection, everybody, on this episode this morning before we hopped on, thinking that this is the final episode of season 3. We've been doing this now for almost 3 years, and it's kind of neat to reflect on all of the topics we've covered and frankly, how far the global cannabis conversation overall has come. I want to thank companies like Grodan and Boveda, who have been global sponsors of the GCNC for the last several years, as well as companies like Ninth Block, who have been very supportive of the Worldview podcast. They're based out of Denver, great advertising and marketing firm, and Thermador out of the UK, who have become our production partners and European support system for the GCNC Worldview as well. So as in business, in podcasts, it takes a village to make all of it happen. So thanks to everybody for all of that. Last episode, we talked about how that previous episode and this one were sort of partners in crime, because we were looking at the flow of two things globally. One is the flow of the monetary funds that work with helping deals get done. And this week, we're going to talk about the flow of products. While cannabis is, of course, a product that is legally shipped and moved all around the world every day, it is complex. It's very complicated with all of the different jurisdictions and laws. And so this week, we're going to delve into that with some folks who have established a company that really does help empower the supply chain. I want to welcome Kevin Schultz. CEO of the 357 company, to the Worldview today. Kevin, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having us on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So, Kevin, you've had a pretty long history in cannabis. I say that, being a person who, even though it's, a little under 10 years for me, still feels like a long history. And within the legalized cannabis industry, it is for many of us. You were at Verano. You did work at PharmaCann. You're at the 357. Tell me a little bit about how you got now to where you are and what the impetus has been for your pathway in cannabis before we jump into the company itself.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess it's been 9 years for me, and I can always align that with my daughter's birthday, because we had just had our daughter in 2014, and a week later I was paying my way to get into a cannabis meeting in Illinois that was hopefuls for licensures in the audience, and I thought that'd be a good spot to position myself to meet some folks that were going to get licenses, and that's really how I broke into the industry. A couple years later, I came on through PharmaCann to start their wholesale division in Illinois, and really that job was bringing products out into the market and ultimately getting them on the shelves at dispensaries. I had my next stop was at Verano, and that role was more optimizing sales and operations at a national level. And what that allowed me to do was really get into the trenches, get into the grows, understand yields, understand how raw material moved around facilities, and then ultimately transported to our stores and third-party dispensaries. So it's been a great journey. I think that moment between 2016 and 19 for those MSOs was explosive. I don't know if we'll see a moment like that ever again, but it was a great experience. And here we are now, 4 years into the 357 company, specializing in the logistics of those products.
Yeah, I think, talking about the boom cycles, I often use loosely the tech industry analogy, right? Where everybody sort of pegs certain moments in time as the big boom and accelerator. But because of the way the countries and states in the US roll out, I think we certainly saw a huge rush at that point, and now I think as European markets legalize in adult use, I think we'll see another boom, probably not like that. And then, of course, at some day, if that point happens where the U.S. regulators, get their head out of wherever it is and start to look at a rational approach to U.S. legalization, I think we'll certainly see another boom at that point. But in the meantime, I think all of us just keep working day to day to keep things moving and running around the world to help grow it in a pragmatic sense. And I think that seems to be where the 357 company fits in, right? Is
Yeah.
really helping to understand that supply chain and logistics and how to fill it. What have you seen as you've grown the company and your team? What have you seen to be the biggest gap in knowledge for organizations that turn out to be great clients for you? What is that primary gap that you are filling?
Really, that gap, I think, is folks meeting each other in the supply chain and weeding out the bad actors. We have a group of us that are considered pioneers that want to leave a legacy. And then you have a group of players that just want to make as much money as possible, screw as many people as possible along the way, and get out. Because we do ship for every component of the supply chain, we're able to kiss those frogs, so to speak, ahead of time and really get a deep understanding for who the players are in each component. And we're very passionate about making those introductions. There are some better sensible policy that needs to be passed as far as moving in process products around the country over state lines, which I think will open up some bottlenecks and get some players to be able to do business with each other legally, and not operate in a gray area. But I think it's really putting those players together, and whether it's a genetics person who's reputable with a grower or finding someone to buy that biomass off that farmer, and it's not going to back out of a contract last minute, quite a bit. So
yeah, and I was looking. Well, we've talked previously about the company, and then I was also doing a little bit of pre-prep before the call, and was noticing you've really sort of segmented your offerings within the cannabis space, I think, into a couple of buckets. You've got the hemp discussion, you've got the cannabis discussion, and then we've got sort of this international logistics piece that we'll talk about. But I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks in particular talking about the hemp space. One of our event partners at the GCNC is the NOCO Hemp Expo, and that just happened, right? And I think what you referenced around finding solid players that you can trust to fulfill the contracts and such has been a challenge in driving it forward. Some of it intentional by bad actors, and some of it circumstantial by the complexities of the industry. But as you've worked in that sector, trying to help grow the U.S. Sort of domestic supply of hemp, what do you see happening? Do you see this continue to be sort of a growth curve, or do you think that we're sort of DOA at the moment based on the structures that we've got?
It's a good question, and NOCO proved out what I had a hunch was happening, is that we're starting to see a shift to industrial on the hemp side. I think it's much needed. I think we kind of had that CBD shining ball moment in 2019 where, coming from the medical cannabis side of things myself, and seeing, state of the art grows, and now everyone just throwing thousands of acres out into the outdoor elements and trying to grow high quality flower. It was kind of a moment for me. And I think some hard lessons were learned. So I like that the industry is shifting to the industrial side more so. I think it's just an extremely useful plant for those uses. But at the same time, we've seen a major uptick in the cannabis side of the plant internationally. I think international, you mentioned at the beginning and the onset that, we're going to see a boom here internationally. We're starting to feel it already. We never expected to be in the international market so soon, But we've kind of organically been taken there, and it's been nice. So you kind of have the U.S. going industrial more so, international going back to that cannabinoid side. So it's an interesting kind of balance. I don't think the cannabinoid side of the hemp plant here domestically is a foregone conclusion, nor do I think it's dead on arrival. You know, I just think we need to figure out a better path forward to put out consistent products.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you know, our next season, season 4, that will be kicking off in Europe this summer. I'll be over there for the next well, starting in June through mid to late October, because there's so much activity happening, and there's this nexus that's occurring where you've got, you know, parts of Africa coming up, you've got Australia, you've got South America, and they're all looking to Europe as the future of the industry, since North America is much harder to work with at times, and specifically, of course, the United States. So one of the key things to making all of that happen, of course, is figuring out the supply chain and how to move those products around the globe, and those ingredients around the globe. I know we've talked with your colleague Jeremy Powers, who I looked for his title on the website, by the way, and it says, I'm just going to call him the International Man of Mystery, because I'm not quite sure what his title is, but I know he does a lot of work in international affairs for you all. But where are you seeing sort of the key movement and the key pain points on those international transactions?
Well, it's interesting you bring up his title, because we've just recently tweaked that, you know, because really he does a lot of supply chain strategy for us. A lot of Jeremy's job is folks, and we welcome this, reaching out and saying, hey, how do I do this legally? And you know, and he's really good at that. He's been shipping specialty products, pharmaceuticals, electronics, high value products internationally for 20 some years. So a lot of that is careful. The reason why he's been successful is carefully planning and making sure paperwork in different jurisdictions and powers to be are all, you know, on the same page before we move along. You know, a lot of times we have folks come to us who are in trouble, and hey, we have something quarantined, can you help us? And it's just a lot of times also talking folks out of doing deals that they shouldn't, because it's not going to be reproducible and consistent for them. So you know, we're excited. We do a lot of work out of the country of Colombia at the moment. One of our key partners, Flora Growth, does a lot of business out of there, and we're going to about 20 some odd countries now, in and out. We've built out the SOPs for probably another 7 or 8. And what I mean by that is we're actively behind the scenes working with these countries in anticipation of a shipment. So when customers call us, we like to have a lot of that legwork done. And again, we're looking for a pathway forward that's going to be able to be accomplished again and again, and not just one time sneak it through. We're looking for that consistency and eliminate those barriers to entry ahead of time.
Yeah, and you know, I think we talked about this the very first time we had a conversation, but one of the things that frustrates me a lot is when we see companies sort of ship something to themselves, not just to test the waters. To me, that's a perfectly legitimate thing to try and do, a pathway. But then they'll put out a press release talking about how they're the first to market, or they're the first to do something. And it's like, no, you snuck something through on the back end through with a postage stamp. That doesn't count, man. That's not
right
how you drive business. But you know, they want to boost their stock price, or they want to get some investment capital in.
Sure.
And that's the kind of shady stuff I think we all have to look out for. And again, there is a difference. I need to, for all my friends out there who have said, hey, I've done that, but not in a sneaky way. I get that. It's not all, some of it's really just testing pathways, and I get it. But when you're using it to drive investment, that's the stuff that hurts the industry overall, and why we need to champion companies like the 357 company that really are helping to drive legitimate, duplicatable pathways to shipping around the world, and working transparently with governments, not in an adversarial way, but to say, look, this is happening. This is an industry. It's legal here and it's legal there. How do we connect the dots? Um, I love seeing that because it is very much what the industry needs overall to be successful. And yeah, I'm
We
certainly a fan of the Colombian market and
yeah,
how they're proceeding.
yeah, we see folks, after the fact, show us bill of ladings where they thought they had cargo insurance that covered their products. The class of freight was categorized discreetly wrong, purposely. We have the same methodology we took in 2019 here in the States, where everyone said the Farm Bill says I can do it. I said, okay, well, have you checked with the states to see if they have any extra asks? I know we could go to court and probably defend ourselves that this was legal, but why not ask? And a lot of the times it was a simple, extra step that, a state like Florida was asking to stop at a checkpoint, or, go off the total THC formula, or not bring soil into the state. And, we really took it upon ourselves to go and check out in each state what they were looking for. And that's the same process we're doing globally as well.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Have you, and I didn't tell you I was asking this question before we got on, so if the answer is I'm not sure, that's totally legit. No, I'm wondering if you've seen any uptick in legal shipments between Africa into the European market. Asia, I've seen a lot of talk and traction there. We've certainly had some conversations about it, but on the operational side and really seeing legitimate shipments, have you seen or gotten any traction in those markets?
I would call it an increase to chatter. A lot of times we're at the mercy of the deals consummating. So we'll do a lot of the legwork, especially in the Asian countries now, South Korea and Japan, two of them in particular, that we feel like we have those SOPs developed. Unfortunately, a couple of those deals are still pending, and a couple of them have fallen through. I'd say Africa a little bit less, but we're definitely starting to get that same feel you're getting, where those conversations are starting to take place.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I ask, because your position in the market is the culmination of chatter, right? It's where chatter turns to transactions, and
right.
I always look for the leading indicators and then the actual indicators that are tracking business, and that's why I asked. South America, Colombia in particular, was the hot topic when we were launching the podcast. We talked a lot about Colombia, and the aspirations were all we're going to ship product to Europe, but nobody was doing it yet, outside of a couple of press releases, like I was referencing earlier. And now, of course, that's really culminating and moving in very tangible ways. So.
Yeah, I'd say countries like Portugal, Switzerland, Ecuador, just to name a few that are really starting to pop off, so to speak. But we're definitely looking forward to seeing some new countries come online. What's interesting in the international market is everything is cannabis, right? Outside of industrial, there's not this big fight between 0.3 and below. It has to be hemp. Everything is cannabis, and yeah, you have your thresholds of THC on what's allowed. We have countries that we're shipping medical grade flower that's extremely high THC, and the agreements between the two countries medically allow for it. So it's refreshing to work in a market that treats the plant as it should be.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Getting rid of inaccurate botanical descriptions that some politician made up would be helpful for all of us. I concur. And it is refreshing. I was having a conversation just yesterday. Now that I live, when I'm not on the road, I live in Mexico. I've been watching that market sort of develop its conversations and really trying to figure out the supply chain logistics for industrial hemp while they figure out everything else. Has been an interesting challenge. But you come at these markets, where they are and within the cultures that apply, and help to drive them with local partners, and it makes sense. And I think that's what I appreciate about your work, about Jeremy's work, is that you're trying to work with the systems that exist, not break them, or even bend them to what you think they should be. You're working with them as it is, and that's the reality of business and how we transact it. So that's why I love having you guys on at the GCNC, because that kind of expertise, frankly, is very hard to find in the world right now.
Mhm. Yeah. And we're doing a lot of advocating behind the scenes for the industry too. I'm on the board of directors for the Hemp Alliance of Tennessee. A lot of those folks are doing some great work in Washington, with the Hemp Roundtable, and we're really trying to, as we see the bottlenecks, how do we open them up and go about that the right way, and rather than just bursting through and saying, I can do this, it's a gray area, but I'll win in court. That's never
Right.
been our approach, and I don't think that's sustainable long term for our industry, or the right way to do it with our climate here in the United States.
Yeah, well, or frankly, anywhere. I mean, the people that make a lot of money when you do it that way are the lawyers. And, that, bless them. I have several lawyers who are business partners who I love, but really, for the businesses to succeed, we've got to move product. And
Hmm.
so I appreciate that a lot. Well, listen, I always ask sort of a crystal ball question at the end. I like to get people's opinions on where they see the biggest movements in the globe and domestically. So, from where you sit and in the middle of driving the supply chain, where do you see currently the biggest opportunities within the United States, and then outwardly? Where do you think the next largest opportunity for your business and actually moving product between states, countries, and continents is?
So when we first started the company, we shipped a lot of biomass. It was mostly cannabinoid, side of the industry. And as of, I'd say, probably the last 3 or 4 months, we're shipping more and more industrial products, from seeds to herd to fibers. And for us, the busier we get, we only get busier when there's more product to ship. And I see a tremendous amount of volume coming online that need our services. So that helps. That helps drive our revenue. That helps keep us busy. I do see a fair amount of isolate still moving around, but those seems to be more spotty. We do have a significant amount of inbound isolate coming into Florida, from countries like Colombia, that also keeps us busy here domestically. I'd say internationally, more on that cannabinoid side, even high THC flower coming out of countries like Colombia as well, where the climate is more conducive to growing. And you have all these countries, asking for the product versus just, pockets of folks here domestically. So, I think the combination of industrial domestically, and then the cannabinoid side of flower in particular, internationally, is what's really going to be interesting to watch over the next year, and what's really keeping us really busy.
That's great. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
I'd love getting your perspective on it, because you are actually driving these deals around the world and helping to operate, the logistics behind them. When we did our annual planning session at the beginning of the year for the GCNC, we talked about how do we want to really evaluate what we provide our members this year. And the last couple of years, we've talked a lot about emerging markets, big picture stuff. But this year, we really wanted to get into the details of how to drive business, and tactically how to get things done. And if there's a company at the heart of doing all that, it certainly is you and the 357 company. So thanks so much for the elaboration and the conversation. And you want to tell people how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. You can reach out to us, via the phone, 844-357-SHIP, or hit our website up at 357company.com. You can just request a meeting, which we highly encourage. Even if you don't have anything to ship, let's meet each other. There might be some introductions we can make for you. But of course, if there's something pending that you need to move, we're ready when you are. So you could also request a quote on the website too, if you just want to jump to that step in the process. So we're looking forward to meeting more folks in the supply chain. We're hoping to get on the road internationally too, with a couple events this year as well. So I
Great.
appreciate you having us on, Chris, and bringing attention to what we feel is the circulatory system of the supply chain logistics. So we're excited.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks so much. Hopefully you'll be joining us in Berlin or London, either of those shows this year. There's some great stuff going on around the world. So thanks everybody. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us. We'll be talking to you soon with the next episode of the GCNC World View.